Good afternoon, everyone. I appreciate the opportunity to celebrate Cybersecurity Awareness Month with you all. It's one of the very few things you'll get to celebrate when you hear the word cybersecurity. And I can promise you this is a pleasure for me because rarely is the cybersecurity guy the one you're happy to see. So my name is Judd Sparks. I work with HAI as their virtual CISO. I work for a company called CyberSix, and we've had a wonderful relationship with you guys for quite some time. And I was asked to come today and kind of give a presentation on some cybersecurity awareness, situational awareness, and maybe some controls and maybe some fun anecdotal stories. Hopefully this will not be some of the dry cybersecurity training things you've been to in the past where your eyes glaze over and you tune out. I really tried to make this as interactive as possible. So with that, from the perspective of questions, I think if we have questions, we do our best to address them as we go through. I think that sometimes as we're going through the material, it helps to address the question then. If we do get a lot of questions, or if you just want to parking lot the question, we can do that too, and I can answer them during, after, and both. Recently, I think we sent out, we meaning myself and HAI, did a similar presentation prior to this and sent out the deck and some fast follower resources. So I'll be sure to remember to send those out to this group as well, because I think that free online resources for cybersecurity are a really nice thing to have in your pocket. So with that, a little bit about my background. I spent 12 years as a tank commander in the Marine Corps. Got out, went to school, did a lot of biomed and pharmaceutical work, and eventually landed in the financial sector with cybersecurity. I worked at a lot of very large banking institutions. And prior to joining CyberSix, which is a managed security service provider, I worked for a large bank. Not only did we have the main bank, but we also had more than 21 banks from New York to Puerto Rico, and provided the Chief Information Security Officer services to all of them. So familiar with this unique type of multi-tenancy business model. So it's been a pleasure for me to work with HAI. Enough about me. Let's go ahead and jump into the presentation. I know we have about an hour together, and I want to make this as fun and light and as informative and interactive as possible. So some of the things we'll look at today, we'll look at what is sensitive information? We need to know what it is, where it is, why it needs to be protected. What is social engineering? I'm sure you've all seen phishing and smishing and all kinds of fun words. And in the tech community, we say that it is your fault for leaving the naming conventions up to us. And then what the organizations are seeing out in the wild. What are some of the things we're seeing? What are you guys seeing? And then we'll leave off with some things that you can do today. What are some things you can take back to your organization and just implement day one? Of course, with understanding that sometimes it takes some formalization, some maturity building, but some kind of this low-hanging fruit to really help bolster your organization's security posture, as soon as you walk in the door.
I'm sorry to interrupt. Is this going to be Spanish, the handouts there?
I'm sorry, could you say that again? There's an echo. I apologize.
I have it activated for Spanish, but everything is still in English.
I don't have a Spanish translation. If that's something that you need, I'm sure we could figure something out. there's nothing I could provide right this second. I apologize.
Hi, Michael. This is Andrew. I'm with HAI Group. We can follow up with you directly to facilitate something in Spanish if need be. So we can touch base after the event.
Thank you.
No worries.
I appreciate it, Michael. Apologies for that. So one of the biggest questions is, what is sensitive information? Right? What do you have in your organization? And this does carry over into your personal life. A digital identity. What's out there, and why is it sensitive? Why is it important? And with sensitive information in an organization, there's a couple of types, right? So you have protected information, and protected information really is information that's required by law to be protected. Sensitive information, personally identifiable information. I think you hear PII or NPI. There's a lot of acronyms, but essentially it's information that can identify a specific individual. And we'll talk about why that's important to protect, but not to be forgotten as well as protected, but confidential information, company confidential information. There are going to be things that might not be required by law to be protected. However, it is very critical to normal business practices, a share of the market, for the company to run the business the best way they can. It could be financial, bottom line financials. It could be potential mergers, high level executive decisioning, things like that that you might not want outside of the organization. So we kind of split those two. In some larger organizations, it comes down to costs sometimes. How do we protect this, right? We want to be pragmatic about it. And so when we look at protected information, we know that that's a law. We want to make sure we're compliant. The confidential information, we want to make sure that we maintain our company integrity. So what is your customers, and this is a play on words, PI, your pie chart. Your customer is an employee. You may have applicants, tenants. There are certainly internet users. So when you think about your your customer, think about their digital identity, what you have in your environment of theirs that has been placed into your protection. A good way to look at this is as a digital identity. Here's your little pie chart. There are certain things that will pop up that I'm sure are very familiar to all of you. So sensitive information you may have in your environment could be social security numbers. Maybe you have them with tenants, applicants, employees, their contact information, right? So email addresses, physical addresses, telephone numbers, think of all the things that you might have on an application. It's quite a bit. If there are any type of government issued IDs, driver's license, passport numbers, birth certificates, anything that may have been used to verify or validate the individual's identity through an application process. Online information, that's a big one. And we may talk a little bit about social media and what kind of information can be gleaned from that. Certainly passwords and validation data, access credentials, account creation credentials, things like that organization may use, again, to create accounts, to verify identities, credit reports, anything of that nature. Account numbers, absolutely. Maybe bank, insurance account numbers. organizational investments, maybe a customer's credit card, payment data, very protected. Geolocation. So everybody has I would think, a smartphone, and there is probably something on there right now that is tracking everywhere you go, and it's either something you want, or you may have taken painful steps to disable it or remove it, or it may be happening and you don't know. But geolocation is a huge part of data collection for big data. I'm sure you can understand how that can be used. Where was someone when they did certain things allows you to maybe market better. That's a positive use, I would think. Medical records, HIPAA. HIPAA is a big regulatory agency that has requirements on protecting this type of data. So all of this data on the right really is used by that digital identity of the customer. And you want to make sure that you understand what it is and where it is, because the next step is you need to figure out how to protect it. And you can't protect what you don't know is there. So let's look at confidential information for a bit. Just real quick, company confidential information. While you might think it's, payroll or balance sheets, it can also be your process and procedures, how you operate. Something as simple as a network diagram, if it's kind of let out in the wild, can be used to walk right into your systems. And you certainly don't want that. Trade secrets and intellectual property. I think patent law is becoming one of the largest and fastest growing branches of law out there. I know it was big in pharmaceuticals and medical devices, especially internationally. But this really is the DNA of a lot of organizations and makes them who they are. And you certainly don't want that taken advantage of, exfiltrated from your systems and used in an illicit way. Of course, product design, development information. There you go, network topology, source code. That's another kind of walkway into your systems you probably don't want on the front page of your website. And then, of course, the different types of financial information that the company deems as very sensitive, maybe investment strategies. Of course, mergers and acquisitions is always a big, important piece that they keep close to the vest. Any litigation, absolutely. And of course, employee and customer information, right? That's the easy one. So when we talk about cybersecurity, in general, you may have heard somebody use the term the CIA triad. And we look at what we want to do to secure the data and what parts of the data are important to secure and why. As an example, maybe a tenant or applicant's social security number. We want to make sure we maintain that confidentiality, maintain the integrity, that we know that what is being entered is what's being used, that the data hasn't been modified or revised or just messed with it anyway. And availability, you want to be able to get the data when you need it. So with confidentiality, as we secure these things, we make sure that data is secure and private, that we understand who's authorized to access it so there's no unauthorized access or sharing. And a lot of times what we'll see with organizations is that random email that goes out, and sometimes it's from either a financial center or HR that has data that they use in their normal course of business. And they send an email, maybe accidentally, to the wrong person, or they might have a distribution list that's old. But an incidental disclosure of data, that can happen probably more times than anything malicious. Data integrity, that's just to make sure that what you have coming in is the same thing you have coming out. and availability. I think that while confidentiality is very important for protected data and integrity is very important for something like financial reporting, availability is certainly important to the end user. If anyone has ever needed to get their data or access to a system and they can't, that can turn you 8 shades of red. I understand how that goes completely. So you want to make sure that the systems are functioning and that the data is where it needs to be and that it can be accessed by those who have the proper authorization. Okay, so some of the technical stuff out of the way, but social engineering. Social engineering is if a hacker wants to hack into your systems, they can create a massive amount of code. It is a huge lift, and they leave a trail when they do that. Probably not the best course of action. What they prefer to do, malicious actors prefer to try to trick you into getting your data, trick you into giving it to them. Because one of my favorite sayings is attackers don't hack in, they log in. 9 times out of 10, with phishing, business email compromise, anything of that sort, they will do their best to trick you into giving them your access credentials, and they'll log in. They get access to the system, change the passwords and username, lock you out, and just run wild. So social engineering, basically using deceptive means to manipulate individuals, to giving confidential and personal information, and they'll almost always be used for fraudulent purposes. I can promise you that. Because at the end of the day, like I said, it is much easier to hack a human than it is to hack a system. Everyone on the call has a job they need to be doing. They're very focused, they're diligent, they're working hard. It is a very challenging thing to do to also try to be aware of malicious actors constantly bombarding your systems, all your devices, with attempts to get your data. And they're really good at it. A lot of times they're coordinated. They'll coordinate phone and email and text. It is not difficult to do that on a massive level. But the rest of us, we're just trying to get through the day. So it happens. It happens, and you do your best to be prepared for it and to be resilient if something does happen. So some of the different types, I'm sure these are going to be very familiar terms. You have phishing, which is I'm sure everybody does their standard phishing campaigns where they have the emails that come through the corporate email accounts, and there is something off, and they give you the opportunity to try to figure out what that is and find it and report it. And if you accidentally happen to click it, it says, uh-oh, you've been phished. Phishing is an attempt to, just like it says, they're phishing for your information. Spear phishing is when they attack a specific individual, a new employee, a CFO, someone that they think a new employee might not be as aware, right? They may have just started work, and they may have not had all the policies, procedures, and understand how things are working. That's a great individual to attack. A CFO who may be a lot more diligent and experienced, and certainly much more difficult to try to phish, has the keys to the kingdom. And so it may be worth the attempt. Whaling, that's just another word for let's go after the CEO. Social media mining. How many of you put on LinkedIn, it's probably even just a cookie cutter attribute at this point, just started a new job somewhere. Wonderful. That data has just been pulled, and we've already heard of incidents where, and this is pretty bad, malicious actors are going so far to data mine your social media accounts, and LinkedIn is a huge one, where maybe they know you're looking for a job. And these groups have actually contacted the individual looking, gone through interviews with the individual, given them offer letters, and then had a fake HR company call them to have them set up for direct deposit. At that point, they have full access to the account. So this individual who has been painstakingly looking for a job thinks that it's all good, and the next morning wakes up and the bank account is empty and no one can be found. It's horrible. But the information that we put on Facebook, Instagram, things like that, it's being looked at. And I'm sure that at least somebody in this group has had friends on Facebook ping them and say, hey, I just got an invite to be your friend again. And I thought we were friends. And you go, oh, okay, please don't click on that. So it happens a lot. Honey traps, not so prevalent anymore, but with something like online dating, using somebody's emotions against them, it's a pretty horrible thing to do to somebody. And of course, when you use the phone, vishing, smishing, if you ever get those texts on your phone, hey, here's something wonderful, just click here. Or hey, here's something horrible, to prevent it, click here. Business email compromise, that's one of the biggest ones. And we'll look at some of the details in that. Then there's some physical things. Tailgating, if you have badging systems. One of the easiest things an auditor can do if they're testing your perimeter defenses is they'll walk in behind a group of people that do work there, walking right behind them. And I think culturally, we are not conditioned to turn around and go, I don't know, you get out. That seems pretty rude. It seems very aggressive. Well, they know that. Dumpster diving, and actually with tailgating, I will say that I've had auditors walking around the 10th floor of a 12th floor building, and people are just afraid to stop them. That was not a good scene. Dumpster diving, of course, throwing any information away. Yes, we want you to maintain a clean desk policy, but at the same time, if it needs to be shredded, I'm sure there are shred bins. If you don't have them, you might want to consider some type of option like that, because documents can be pulled out of the trash and so much information can be gleaned from that. Baiting is one that I think a lot of companies have got some strong mitigating controls in. Baiting is where a malicious actor will put malware on a flash drive and just leave it places. And as soon as the flash drive is picked up by somebody and taken back to work and plugged in to see what's on it, they've got your system. I know a lot of companies are going to the no flash drive, no removable storage devices. I think that kind of depends on what use cases you might have for it. I would always suggest doing the best you can to remove that capability. And if you need to have some type of document sharing or document movement, there are some online services, but you can also get some serious flash drives that have kill switches where if you don't know where it is, you can kill it and it fries everything right there. So there are some options, but malicious actors are still trying to hit some physical side of things because it's a cycle, right? You are so focused on your email, maybe you don't look to other places. All right, so some of the most prevalent attacks companies are subjected to. I know we wanted to do this interactive. I think we have quite a few people. I would normally ask the audience, hey, what are some of the things you're seeing? So just real quick, think of 3 things top of your head that you might consider the top 3 attacks that your company is trying to be prepared and resilient for. And I'm hoping that you saw phishing, business email compromise, and the big scary one, ransomware. if you thought of these three, great. If you thought of some others, there's a reason you thought of them. Maybe you should look into that. Not every company is the same. There are different avenues of approach, different attack surfaces that malicious actors might use, depending on, your type of organization, the product and service that you provide, the complexity of your organization and the product and services you provide. But here I would say from a financial and insurance perspective, it can be pretty lucrative to a cyber criminal. But these are the three big ones, and they've changed over time, for sure. If you can think back, 10, 20 years ago, what might have just started to happen at that point. I think iPhones just came out, May 2005? It's not that long ago that door was opened. So let's look at some phishing attacks. Some of the things that we might have. Some of the different attacks you might see are, of course, the email phishing. And I'll show you hopefully a simple way to maybe increase your awareness and catch some of these things, or at least know when to, raise an awareness that maybe it is, maybe it isn't, but it's better to ask. There's the spear phishing again. A lot of the email phishing cast a very broad net, just to see what they get. If they throw it out there to 10,000 users, it really doesn't take any more time than throwing it out to one user. If they have a couple of users respond out of that, that is an incredibly low percentage. But for them, it's worth it. Spear phishing, however, is they go directly at somebody. Whaling, again, find the biggest bang for the buck in the organization and do what you can to try to get that. There's a huge payoff if you can. Smishing, so that's going to be more of a text-based, and this happens a lot. A lot of this stuff is seasonal. It happens a lot during the holidays, where you get things like Amazon or FedEx. You don't know if you're going to be, if it's in the middle of June, if you've ordered something, 9 times out of 10, right? If it's in the middle of the holiday season, somebody may have sent you something. And so it's really easy when that awareness is lowered by some type of seasonal environment. Another one would be tax season. That's a huge one. I don't know if anybody else has, but I have actually had quite a few phone calls to tell me that if I didn't pay right now, pay the IRS, I was going to be arrested and my social security number would be suspended. And I usually will have a lot of fun with those individuals. And phishing, really that's more of a phone attack. Call up, see if I can't convince somebody to divulge information on the phone. Usually it's going to be an emergency and I need it right now and I can't go through the normal channels and I can't deal with this normal stuff and why can't you just help me? And we'll appeal to your better nature during what feels like a very elevated and emergent time, completely planned. Stick to protocols, and I can tell you that nobody wants to be the bad guy, but at least follow the protocols and the proper escalation procedures. And if you don't have those, you should probably talk about what to do if somebody doesn't know information, because the back end of that could be very challenging if something were to happen. All right, so phishing stories. As a cybersecurity professional, we do a lot of program, system, and technology testing, right? And sometimes it's so painful you have to find the humor in it. If you don't laugh, you're going to cry. And we have a couple of examples here of some past phishing campaigns that I thought were pretty funny, a little lighter side of things. The first one is not mine. but I was working with an auditor that told me the story. A blind phishing campaign was conducted, right? So that means they didn't tell anyone, didn't tell legal, didn't tell, of course, like maybe the CIO or the CEO, somebody knew to give the thumbs up, but it was blind, so nobody knew it was coming. And the service that did it had a program that would count how many times they were clicked if they clicked on the malicious link. The problem was the results they got were really confusing. The results showed that they had a great deal more clicks and shares than they did participants, right? So it didn't make sense to them. And after they dug into it, what they found was that not only did a lot of the employees open it and click on it, but they shared it with all of their friends, who then shared it with their friends. They forwarded the emails. They thought, without even reading it, this looks funny, and sent it on. And it's just not something you want. But at the end of the day, trying to figure out what those results were and why they happened, and then to understand how bad it got, that was rather humorous. Another one was one that I actually conducted. I was a young cybersecurity specialist. And when I would send them out, I knew what was going out to whom and when. And I would watch some of the results as they came in just to see how everyone was doing. And we had one participant who got it on their phone. Sometimes it's not easy to really see that. You're on the go, you look at it, you click it, nothing happens. But not being satisfied with that, as they came into work, they clicked on their laptop. And we're watching this happen in real time. And before we could tell them to stop, they clicked on the second mobile device, their laptop, their iPad, their desktop, and eventually ran out of devices. And not once did they stop to think of why this wasn't working, or clearly the "you've been phished" button that popped up. That's one of the things you can look back on as funny, but if that had been something real, we would have had a problem. So there is some humor. And what I do tell a lot of companies is, if you have an employee who has been legitimately phished, please don't crucify that individual. These malicious actors are usually organized crime groups. They have huge technology budgets. They have huge hacking centers. They are very coordinated. They're very good. That is their full-time job. There are full call centers. There are buildings filled with these individuals that are nothing more than malicious actors who are trying to attack anyone and everyone they can. So it does require some additional training, some security and awareness increase. But if you have someone that's working there and they're doing their job well, take it as a learning moment, but try to be sensitive to what's going on, because they really are going up against some good professionals. Business email compromise. This is a tough one. What happens here is, once your data has been, your access data, your account data has been gleaned from some system, and they get into your email, there are a few things that they want to try to accomplish, and they will try to accomplish them as you. So you have impersonation, right? So hackers will use fake emails to pose as somebody in the company. Maybe you have a new employee who doesn't know everybody yet, and the hackers know this because there was a huge welcome aboard and congratulations on your new job, and confetti on LinkedIn, and they go, great, so we know this person will start soon at this time. Give it a little time and send them an email and see what they do. A lot of times that could end in information being exfiltrated. Also, somebody could impersonate the CEO. I can promise you, your CEO will never send you an email and tell you that it's very urgent that you go to Target and buy Google Play cards. Companies don't pay people like that. So again, we'll give you a couple of steps to look at, but who is asking you and what they're asking is important. And the best thing to do. Oh, sorry. Did I have a question? Oh, okay. One of the best things to do is just call them. Call up and go, okay, I know this sounds silly, but I have to ask the dumb question. Did you ask this? And they're going to laugh and go, absolutely not. I would much rather have that conversation than the conversation where you're trying to hand them $10,000 of Google Play cards. Different conversation. So just call, just ask. The best thing to do is reach out. Walk into the office if it's somebody that's on site. Account compromise, that's a little bit tougher, where a malicious actor will gain access to a legitimate employee email, and they're able to essentially digitally function as that employee. They can capture and reply to your vendors. A lot of times that can yield wire fraud. And so they'll gain access, they'll read your emails, they'll see that you have a loan that's going to someone or a payment that's coming from someone. And when you send them wire instructions, they snag that out of the air and they send new instructions. And now that individual, without knowing it, gets those instructions and sends, I've seen hundreds of thousands of dollars meant to be used for a home purchase being sent to a fraudulent account, and then it gets really messy. You can lose the sale, you could lose the money, you could lose both. It's a horrible situation. Had a family member that happened to who had saved for their retirement home, and that was going to be kind of the last hurrah as they retired. And the bank is not usually the one, the lender is not usually the one that's getting hacked. It's something like the title company, who may not have a giant cyber budget, who may not have controls in place, who may be using Gmail or whatever they have at their disposal. Resource constraints are a reality. But they're compromised. And so the lender doesn't even know what's happened until the lender calls and says, we haven't seen the money go in. And the seller says, I haven't received anything. And that's a scary place for the buyer to be. Thread hijacking, that does happen. Maybe not as often, but it is even more difficult to identify because it looks like it's coming from that employee. And they'll open it just because there's a level of familiarity, level of comfort and security, because I think we're in our own systems. We're safe inside. They're getting good. They'll even hang out for 5-6 months. They've had systems that were compromised a year ago. And at that time, they didn't even know it, and they just waited. They waited until the right moment, until there was something that they could compromise and use. And when they found kind of that big score, then they acted. And after all of the investigation was done, it was found that they've been in the system for well over a year. And that's not a good feeling, because then you have to question what else did they have access to and what else has been done. And yeah, like the point we made earlier, wire fraud is a huge problem. So leads to malware, the last big one. Ransomware. And ransomware by design is a malware. It gets in the same ways. It's usually more of a social engineering type of account credential gaming attack, but ransomware by design does a lot of different things. So the approach, right, is to gain access to your systems, your networks, usually through some type of phishing, download their malware into the network, and then gain access and encrypt your data. And once that happens and they have the keys to the kingdom, the goal is to then hold that data for ransom. So that's a very, very tough place to be. The industry is working, every day to try to battle this, making a lot of really good strides. There are a lot of companies and technologies out there that are getting better at understanding some of the differences in the DNA of that malware to identify it, because the quicker you can identify it and maybe segment your systems, the better chance you have of mitigating some of that damage. But really your greatest protection at this is what we would call your human firewall, right? Your people, their level of awareness. It can be as simple as see something, say something. But I think a lot of companies now have phishing incident response type of capabilities. I mean, there's a whole host of things that you can do to try to be proactive. Reactive, it's a really good idea to run what we call incident response tabletop exercises, where you walk in, and I just did one recently. We used ransomware as a scenario, and we got a technical team in the room, and we got a strategic team in the room, and we said, okay, so here's the scenario. Day one, these things happen, day two, and on and on. To walk through your preparedness and your resilience and your response programs and procedures to see how ready you are, not just ready to react, but how ready you are to recover. So tabletop exercises are a very good idea, and they always yield some important areas for opportunity. They get some, the technical team might not have exposure to what the legal side might need to do, and vice versa. So there's a lot of things that can be learned from just basic tabletop exercises. And so here's some more technical stuff. So from ransomware, there's phishing and social engineering, how they get in. It's very similar to other malwares. So while the response and reaction might be a little different, the preparedness really shouldn't be. Malvertising, that's one that is really seasonal as well. That's malicious advertising. You may go to a site that is legitimate, and they may have been compromised themselves, and you click on something you think is okay, you're taken to another site that looks like it's a part of that main website, that main company, but it's not. And before you know it, you've entered in information that you don't want public. So it's just be aware before you click on things. A lot of times, if it seems like it might be an issue, then just don't do it. Because a lot of malicious actors will provide you with something that is, in the past, has been a very arduous task. And here's the easy way to do it. Just click here. And so for convenience, a lot of times we do that. You may have some software vulnerabilities. So I do have a slide that gives some basic fundamental preparedness steps you can take to make sure from a technical perspective that your systems are as strong as they can be. And of course, credential theft. Again, they don't hack in, they log in. All right, so with all of that, what do we do? What do we do with that? We know we've seen some different types of sensitive information. It'd be good to know where that information is in your environment. That'll allow you to prioritize what is protected and how. Is it regulatory? Is it a company confidential? So you're going to have strategic conversations around how you protect things. Of course, there's a cost to it, right? You don't want to spend $5,000 to secure the penny. There needs to be a pragmatic approach for sure. And the best way to prioritize is knowing what data you have, how critical it is, and where it is. But some of the things that you can start today, right? First thing, company culture. Working with HAI has been amazing. They have an incredible security culture. Senior management is immensely supportive. from a strategic and a project, program, budget perspective. So it's been a very big pleasure for me to work with them. Training awareness programs. Things like this are great. Seasonal awareness programs are wonderful. Tax season, holiday season, sporting events, World Cup, Olympics, championships in other sports are always something that you might just click on to see what was the score. If you get an email that says, "Oh my gosh, check this score out. I've never seen anything like this in my life." And out of curiosity, you go, "Oh, click." So awareness and things like that, and just basic training. What kind of programs do you have in place? Strong password policies. This is always the eye roller. Usually I say this and I see the entire audience roll their eyes and go, "Please don't make me create another password, and please don't give me more rules to follow." But what the industry has started to see is instead of changing passwords every 30 days, it's better to have strong password policies, create that really strong password, use multi-factor authentication to bolster that posture. Of course, email security awareness, conduct phishing campaigns. It's almost, that's the technical version of that incident response tabletop. Give the employees a chance to get some experience with what is out there and maybe how to identify, increase their awareness. And I do have some stuff in the slideshow that gives some fundamental ransomware preparedness and resilience controls that you can drop in place. And some that are pretty important, but they're not something you can do overnight, which is know what critical data you have and where it is. You can't protect what you don't know is there. So knowing where that is in your environment, a lot of times it's HR, it's finance, in the technical side of the house, admin rights to things, but know where that protected information is, know where that company confidential information is, understand where they reside, why it's critical, and then how to protect it. And another big part is know your regulatory liabilities. So there's two pieces to this. There's compliance, which is your regulations, and then there's security. And security and compliance are not the same thing. They need to go hand in hand. They definitely need to be bridged. Most companies that you see in the news that have been hacked were deemed as compliant. They just weren't secure. So compliance is the rule book. This is what you need to have done to market your product or service in this space, this industry, this geographical region. Security is what you do to protect what you have in your environment and direct relationship to how you're set up, what your network looks like, who your vendors are, and so on. But compliance and security are two different things and certainly need to be addressed individually and collectively. Okay, so here are some examples of the previous slide. Enterprise training programs, phishing campaigns, seasonal awareness, and we kind of spoke about these. Anytime you might have a lack of personnel resources internally and you want to have an externally managed program, there's a lot of great phishing type of programs that will help run those campaigns for you. They might even have, most have elements of email incident response to help you respond to things. Also, make sure you train your vendors and contractors and consultants. I'm a cybersecurity professional, and I still am required to do the HAI group training, and I do it, and I enjoy it. It's a great program. But as a contractor, as a consultant, it's a requirement for that vendor risk management program. You might look at including some paragraphs and job descriptions, your HR manual, just to clarify what the company's position might be on these things and what some fundamental practices are, maybe an onboarding process for new employees, just for that awareness and that build a company culture. And consider some warning banners for, this is more of a company protection. When somebody logs on, it says, hey, just to let you know, you're going onto a professional device, and make sure you adhere to all the cybersecurity policies and procedures and, act accordingly. And so we're getting down to time, and really the last couple of slides as takeaways are some great individual controls that you can have for best password practices, email security and awareness. There's, some anagrams that help you as you're looking at an email, kind of maybe identify if it's potentially fraudulent. Some ransomware preparedness and resilience controls. These are great to have in your pocket. But so those last three slides were really meant to take back to your organizations, kind of read through, peruse, digest them, see how they might resonate with your organization. And know that if you have any questions, I'm always available. It would be a pleasure to help anyone increase their security posture, to make them feel better about where they are in protecting their customers and protecting their employees and protecting the business. And so with that, really, that's a lot. There's a great I Love Me slide that's in the back if you want to know more about me. But overall, I think we did a good job. We made it through the hour, and I wish I could see everybody's faces, but I can't. So I hope you enjoyed it. Andrew, if you wanted to take the helm.
Sure, Judd. I had one more. Well, we have a couple minutes actually here. If anyone has any questions, feel free to drop it in the chat or unmute and go ahead. But just low-hanging fruit for people that aren't like at the management level or something. They're just employees that are trying to get more awareness on what to do if they get like a phishing email or something. Like, what's a good piece of advice if they get a phishing email that they suspect is phishing? Should they just delete it? Should they notify someone? Like,
That's a great question.
What's some good high-level advice for that?
That is a great question. And what would really help the IT and InfoSec capabilities within your organization is to not touch anything but notify them right away. Because what they'll do is they'll take that email, they'll check to see where it's coming from, has it gone out to anyone else in the organization. It allows them to contain a potential issue, and if it's not an issue, they'll let you know. But if you delete it, that removes their opportunity to use that as a strengthening opportunity. So don't forward it, don't do anything. Just call the department and say, hey, I think I just got a phishing email. What would you like me to do? Some companies at the top of their Outlook do have a phish button. I don't know what everyone's capabilities are, but there are services, and there are. It may be an Outlook or a Microsoft option where if you think that email is a phish, you hit the phish button, and it then notifies the appropriate department within your company who can then take action. But yeah, please don't delete it. Certainly don't click on it, but don't delete it because your IT department will take that. They'll identify the IP. They'll block it. It does help them. Great question.
Thanks, Judd. We have a hand raised from Michael Cavana. Go ahead, Michael, if you have a question.
Yes, thank you. I'm sorry, I may have missed something, but did you say we could get a copy of this presentation?
Yes, sir. We're going to send a follow-up email to everyone on this call right now with a copy of this presentation and some additional resources as well for your organization, for sure.
Thank you. Very good.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and to that fast follower, one thing I did realize after I gave a similar presentation last month was there are quite a few online resources that are free that you can use. And so I thought, why not? So I put those all together, and hopefully that'll be one of the resources we can send out.
Yes, absolutely. We'll include that, Judd. Really quick, we have another minute left. Anyone else has a question? I had one more thing, kind of a low-hanging fruit. And one of the slides at the end, you mentioned multi-factor authentication. Could you just explain what that is for everyone who might not be aware and why that is such an important tool?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Appreciate that. So when you log in to your bank account, a lot of times there is an additional type of identity verification. So sometimes, and there's, to answer it quickly, think about a text you might get from your bank account, or if you use Duo that says, hey, you just logged in. Is this really you logging in? So when multi-factor authentication, the different types of authentication might be something you are, like a biometric, your eye, your face, things like that. Something you have, like maybe a hard token, or something which is like your username and password. So those three things, usually 2 out of the 3, a lot of times you'll hear dual factor authentication. But most individuals that have gotten your account information or your access information from somewhere have username and password, but they're not going to have your phone, and they're not going to have your email, and they're not going to have a hard token. So they're not going to have your face, and those are added access control verification pieces that allow that to happen. So think about, when I log into the HAI systems from my company, I log in with my account, my username and my password, and then it sends me a secondary authorization request to an application I have on my phone, and I need to respond to that. So that's 2 methods, something I have and something I know. On your phone, your bank account, anything like that, a lot of times now they're using that face identification. Yeah, I forget what they call it, but that in addition to your username and password are what you use to get into that. So it's one of those 3 things.
Thanks, Judd. Anyone else have any questions? Feel free to speak up or raise your hand. I had another one for you, Judd, really quick.
Sure.
For a housing organization that, might not be smaller, might not have the financial resources to have a robust IT team, or doesn't have an IT team at all, what are some of your recommendations for how they can approach some of this stuff? Because like you said, it can get pretty technical. How can they go about digging into all this stuff along with all the other responsibilities they have as part of their normal jobs?
Right. Yeah. It certainly can seem like a very arduous task. What I hope to have captured in those free resources are some basic fundamental guidelines and frameworks that you can use just to even get those programs out there. They're meant for that. There are some simple assessment tools that it's almost just like a basic Q&A where they ask questions to help you understand what your inherent risk, without any mitigating controls, what your inherent risk is by, who has access to your networks, how many mobile devices do you have? And so these tools, what I hoped would do is give you free tools to work with to help you understand what you have in your environment, and then some fundamental ways to protect it. From a technical perspective, I think that most companies, they do what they can do. The technologies are not usually the main avenue into your organization. But I really think that if you look in an organization, the scary part is the smaller you are, the easier the target you are, for sure. And the malicious actors know that. But those resources should have a lot of that stuff in there. And not only did I provide the resource and the link, but I also said, hey, with this resource, use it like this. You don't need to go boil the ocean. Just do step 1 and 2 of 24. And that'll give you a really good understanding of what you have in your environment, where it is, and just that visibility of your attack surface is a huge step.
Would you ever recommend looking into an IT consultant if a housing organization doesn't have a robust team in-house, or like a cybersecurity consultant to bring in just for like an assessment or something like that?
Absolutely. And that's exactly why I went from the CISO at a financial organization to working with CyberSix. Is in that business model, we had 21 farming lenders who were responsible for their own security. And I recognized very quickly that they didn't have the resources. It just wasn't, it's not like they were lacking or had gaps because they weren't doing the right things. They were doing wonderful things. And that's where the vCISO came into play, where you can have a virtual CISO who can come do these things for you for short periods of time, a couple hours a week, where your organizational size and complexity doesn't necessitate a full executive strategic type of cybersecurity professional. But absolutely, everything from a full managed security platform to could you come do some training? Can you do a quick risk assessment? We have rapid risk assessments specifically for that. So yes, absolutely. Those resources out there, I'd love to help in any way I can. This is one of the things that I enjoy doing is helping organizations that really don't have those tons of resources, but still need that level of security. And they're out there. If you have any questions, feel free to ping me, Troy, anyone else that, Troy's got a great program. I've really enjoyed working with him and his departments. So yeah, those virtual or fractional CISOs are out there. If you can, I would also suggest bringing in someone that has some basic cybersecurity knowledge, even if it's taking somebody from the technical team and having them train on it, because then you have somebody from that tactical point of view and the strategic point of view.
And one last point I wanted to make before we go is often we hear that, ransomware or other types of cybersecurity incidents aren't typically a threat for housing organizations, but we could say as an insurance carrier that they definitely are. Mm-hmm. And we've highlighted several of those incidents. Recently, we highlighted a ransomware incident at Denver Housing Authority in 2021, which will be in the follow-up materials that we send. So this is as Judd is saying, this is a very real threat for, pretty much everyone on this call. And you don't want to wait till after a cybersecurity incident to take action because it's too late then. And then also, once your organization has suffered a cybersecurity incident, it's very difficult to find an affordable cyber insurance policy that's going to cover what you need covered. Go ahead, Mike. Mike Hunter's got his hand raised. Go ahead, Mike. You got a question?
Sorry, I didn't mean to do that, but that's all right.
Oh, no worries.
But I was thinking when you mentioned that our local city, we work with many municipalities in our area, but the one that we actually reside in, the entire city was tied up it went on for 6 weeks, 2 months, ransomed and non-functional. And so no email, no phones, no service. We couldn't communicate with them and began doing site rounds with personal email. So it's real. It's real.
Right. Mike, I appreciate that because you make a great point. Not only may you have to pay a ransom potentially, but your business continuity is going to be impacted. You're not going to be able to continue collecting rent, sending emails, communicating with your residents. It's going to shut everything down, make your life even more difficult. So it's just something you want to absolutely avoid, using some of these suggestions, recommendations from Judd and the additional resources that we're going to send along. So,
yeah, and real quick, with most financial organizations or those that have the same type of mission that you guys do, one of the biggest risks is reputational, and the ransoms are becoming smaller because they're easier to grab. And the denial of services can certainly be a massive headache, but the reputational impact on your customers and clients can be pretty extensive.
That's a great point. Any last questions? All right. Thank you everyone for joining. Thank you to Judd for your great presentation. We appreciate your time, and we hope I'll see you all at our next training. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, everyone. It was my pleasure.
Take care, everyone. Bye.